All right, welcome back into the Live Impact studio. I'm Nick Carboni, sports director here at WCNC Charlotte. It is May, and around here that means two things. Golf, and we just wrapped up the PGA Championship, and NASCAR. NASCAR running at its true home here in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. We had North Wilkesboro last weekend, another successful all-star race, and we've got the Coca-Cola 600 coming right on the heels of that this Memorial Day weekend. So we had to bring in somebody who could talk about all of that and talk about it well, and he does it every week for a living. Brad Gillie from Performance Racing Network does Fast Talk with Doug Rice and Alexis Erickson. You can find that every single week. GoPRN.com. Brad, thanks for joining me, man. I know it was a fun weekend up at North Wilkesboro.
Oh, my gosh. It was great. Doug Rice and I actually had a blast because we went up there and we were just the PA announcers. We didn't have to worry about broadcasting or anything. And that's what's fun because you get to really bring the energy in the building. And not that they needed us for that because the action on the track honestly spoke for itself. It was just, it's such an amazing weekend and an amazing piece of history.
What is it like to be there? I mean, because we see it on TV, and I've been there, and you could just tell the people that are there are just so into it. And they are at every track that the sport goes to, but there's some extra meaning at North Wilkesboro, feels like. What does it feel like?
Yeah, so I look at it this way. Imagine, and I'll think of like, a big concert that's been here in like the last 4 or 5 years. Imagine the Rolling Stones, right, who played at Panthers Stadium. Imagine if they were playing at a nightclub somewhere in downtown Charlotte, and you could go be there and feel that energy. That's kind of what North Wilkesboro is like because all of NASCAR's history is there, and the way that track looked when it closed in 1996 is pretty similar to the way it looks today. I mean, a few modern upgrades, but it still has that same soul, if you will. And I think that's the cool thing. The people who were there are just having a great time. It's easy to get around when you're on property, and it's fun to just see the history and feel like you're at something special. And I think that's maybe the best way I could describe it.
Absolutely, and you can feel it through the audio and the video on the broadcast. So let's put a pin in the All-Star race real quick because the Hall of Fame news is the most recent thing in NASCAR. Hall of Fame class of 26 coming out last night. We got Kurt Busch, really the headliner. You got Harry Gant, Ray Hendrick, the modified driver, getting in on the Pioneer Era ballot. Humpy Wheeler, landmark award winner. Do you have any Humpy Wheeler stories for us? I've never gotten a chance to meet Humpy, but he's a legend. If you go to Charlotte Motor Speedway, you're going to hear Humpy stories.
I'll almost give my version of like almost everyone's Humpy story because a lot of it is the same. Number one, that man can tell stories, and he lived all of them. When you look at the history of our sport, Humpy lived it. And we talk about him as the title of the president and general manager of Charlotte Motor Speedway, but he was so much more to so many people. Humpy was the person that when a young driver was coming up, he would counsel or advise that driver. When a young reporter was coming into NASCAR, he would say, hey, look, if you're going to cover the sport, this is really what you need to look at and what you need to focus on and things like that. You look at our drivers today, from Kyle Busch to Joey Logano and, literally people who are champions of our sport, a lot of them came up driving Legends cars. That was Humpy's idea. That was his design. So Humpy made everyone better, and I think that's the best thing. And my personal experience with him, he was the guy that, you look at Humpy before you meet him for the first time, and you think, here's this larger-than-life person. And he is. Don't get me wrong. Here's this larger-than-life person that's walking up to me and greeting me by name. Here's this larger-than-life person that the conversation we're having, you feel like it's the most important thing at the moment. And that, to me, is Humpy.
All class and now in the class of 2026 for the NASCAR Hall of Fame. All right, we got to talk about Kurt Busch. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's won some of the crown jewel races. He's won 34 Cup Series races as well. Longevity and excellence over time is what stands out to me when you think about Kurt Busch's career and journey as it was. What stands out to you?
Performance. Kurt, it's funny because Kurt was really the beginning of the era of young drivers. I mean, Jeff Gordon is really that person. But Kurt came in and almost had like no street cred, no skins on the wall, no anything. Yesterday he was talking at the Hall of Fame. He's like, 1999, I'm driving a Legends car around the bull ring at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. A year later, I'm qualifying 10th in a cup race, beating people like Dale Earnhardt and so on. So Kurt comes in as this goofy-looking kid with an attitude that I think people looked at and were like, come on, man, who are you? Really? You're going to come in here like he was West Coast when this sport wasn't West Coast. But then he proved it out on the racetrack. Goes out there and wins 5 races at Bristol, wins the Daytona 500 late in his career, wins a championship early in his career. I mean, he did everything pretty much that there is to do in the sport, and then some.
You know, unlike Humpy Wheeler, I have gotten the chance to meet Kurt Busch, and I'm coming in from the outside, but I've watched racing over the years, and I've seen some of the on-track stuff and the battles and the disputes, and I'm like, that's not the guy I just met. What do you know about Kurt, just the human being and the individual?
So it's Kurt, on and off the track, I mean, not going to sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
He was a guy with, a lot of angst, a lot of attitude, a very short temper in a lot of ways. And on the track, you saw the short temper. You also saw it off the track as well. And when I think of Kurt Busch, you have to think of all of those things. When I think of Kurt Busch in the Hall of Fame, I think about what he did on the racetrack and the things that he accomplished, because he went up there against the best of the best, people who had been doing this, since he was probably 8 years old, and went out there and was beating them on the racetrack. But it was that same fire that we saw with his temper at times that also fueled him. And he wasn't afraid to yell at anybody, whether it was his crew chief, a reporter, or someone else. But he also was a person that when you sit down face to face with him is extremely engaging, extremely nice. When he's away from the field of play, when the chin strap is loosened from the helmet, if you will, great guy.
All right, Brad Gillie here from Performance Racing Network. Let's talk about North Wilkesboro on the track. Christopher Bell said it was some of the best short track racing he's seen. Well, he had the benefit of winning and hoisting the $1 million check. What did you think of the racing on the track?
I thought the racing was incredible. 2 years ago, we ran on the original surface, or the one that was still there for 25 years. Last year, it was the first year it was repaved, but they tried two different tires, a softer tire and what they were calling the primary tire at the time. Joey Logano went out there on the softer tire and led pretty much every lap, all but one. This year, everyone came back. Everyone's on the same tire. Everyone's doing this. And the way they repaved the racetrack, actually, the bottom lane is a different, let's call it sandpaper, a different grit of sandpaper than the middle lane than the top lane. So what they did was really genius, and it worked this second year. So drivers could drive up next to someone, run door to door, push them up the racetrack, do that. What they couldn't do is just drive underneath someone and blow them away. So it meant we just had cars side by side, lap after lap after lap. It was awesome.
And there were fireworks, literally and figuratively. Nobody got punched in the face this year, as far as I know, but Joey Logano with kind of a swing with his comment about Christopher Bell saying he beat us with less of a car. What did you make about the ending, the on-track stuff between those two and Logano's comments after?
I'm here for it all. I mean,
right?
Seriously. Yeah. Look, if you're the guy on the losing end of that, you're going to be mad, right? Yep. If you're the guy on the winning end of it, you're going to be happy. You're holding up $1 million check. If you're Joey Logano, and he's even said this since, look, I would have raced Christopher the same way. I mean, that's just the reality of it. But that's what the All-Star race is about. It's about like a winner-take-all mentality to go out there and win $1 million. But for me, a good race is a combo of everything. I want to see passing. I want to see, pit stops. I want to see wrecks. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like I always say, how do you know that they're pushing it to the edge if you don't ever see them push it over the edge? We saw people pushing it over the edge in many different ways, whether with pit road mistakes, whether wrecks, whether pushing each other's buttons. We had all of those things, like everything that goes into a NASCAR race, the ingredients, that was it right there Sunday night. All
right, Christopher Bell, I mean, look out, folks. I mean, this guy's winning left and right. He's the defending Coke 600 winner. We're going to talk about that race soon. Now he's got an all-star race under his belt. I think he's got 19 Cup Series wins in like 4.5 seasons. He's kind of understated sometimes, and his personality doesn't stand out as much as some of the guys in his class, so to speak. But what have you made of his career so far and where it can go? And this was a big win for him. It's not a points win, obviously, but that was a big one for him to pick up.
It really was. I'm a big Christopher Bell fan. Being a Texas guy, he's an Oklahoma guy. You get someone from your region, and all of a sudden he does big things, whether it was trucks, Xfinity, and now in Cup. I think that's really cool. But this is what I like about Christopher as a driver. Number one, he's got an amazing crew chief in Adam Stevens, and the two of those gel together in a great, great way. But this is one thing Christopher has that it takes a lot of drivers years to understand, and good decisions on the racetrack. A lot of drivers can go out there and pass cars and run fast and make good pit stops and all of that, but sometimes you have to know when to go and know when not to go. And Christopher makes good decisions on the racetrack. That's a veteran, and he's early in his life a veteran, and he's going to be here doing this for a while.
And you got to know where to be when it's raining, because that's what he did last year at the 600. Although, well earned. Last question about North Wilkesboro. I mean, this has been a 3 or 4 year journey now. It's gone from great story to, as we said, great racing. And like I mentioned, I mean, whether you're there or you're just watching, and if you haven't been, I highly suggest, the next chance you have to go see Cup racing there, do it, or any racing there. It's going to be hard to not race there for the Cup Series in the future. I mean, I feel like it's gotten to that point. How do you think they kind of try to work North Wilkesboro in going forward after the success of the last couple of years?
I don't know what's going to happen next year. So that's as far as I can forecast. I genuinely don't know. But it's funny. I went that weekend, and Doug Rice and I were up in the PA booth. I go, man, imagine this with 13 more cars on the track, like a full field points race. But then as everything went, I kind of shifted, and I thought, but why? Like, this is really cool. You have a very special place, a unique place. You have NASCAR's history and roots. Maybe this should just be a special event. And I don't know that it can live on like that forever, don't get me wrong. If it was just me making a choice based on whatever, I would say, let's leave the All-Star race in North Wilkesboro. Let's ride this out, because a lot of people should get to experience this for what it is now. And if at a certain point it's like, okay, All-Star race, we've done that for however many years. Okay, the next new thing you can do is make it a points race and run a full field 400-lap event, something like that. So I don't think we have to dive into that just yet. But at a certain point, I think we do. And I think it'll be really cool when we do.
Seems like a sweet spot right now. That's for sure after this weekend. All right, turning to the Coca-Cola 600 as we continue our chat with Performance Racing Network's Brad Gillie. Every driver wants to win the Cup Series championship. Every one of them wants to win the Daytona 500. But if you ask all of them to a driver, the Coke 600 is high on that list. Why is that?
It's one of the crown jewels. Number one, it's the longest race of the year, and that it's the longest race in any series, effectively, in what we do. I mean, I know there are off-road races that go 1,000 miles and all of that, but it's the longest single closed circuit race that exists right now. So number one, that's big. History is there. This is Charlotte Motor Speedway, and we have some legendary tracks in motorsports, from Daytona to Charlotte to Indianapolis, where we're racing this weekend as well. And it's one of NASCAR's crown jewels. So when you talk about, you mentioned the Hall of Fame. We just saw Kurt Busch go in. One of the things you talk about when you talk about people's careers, a champion, a Coca-Cola 600 winner, a Daytona 500 winner, you add these races into that as well. The Southern 500 at Darlington, the same thing. So it's all of it that goes into it. And doing this in its traditional spot on Memorial Day weekend since the beginning, I mean, is just such an amazing spot on the schedule. So it's one of the crown jewels.
And it's obviously, it wraps up such a fantastic day of motorsports. You've got the Indy 500, Monaco Grand Prix. Each of the three races are such unique tests. What is the biggest test of the 600, and does it kind of lie in the name there?
Endurance. So the Indianapolis 500, and I love the Indy 500, don't get me wrong. It starts and it ends in the sun shining the whole time. The Coca-Cola 600, that's what makes it different. And they talk about Charlotte being a track that swings in the way the car handles on the racetrack from day to night. And literally half the race is in the day, the other half is at night. And you might be just lights out fast the first 200 laps, and then all of a sudden lost the final 200, or vice versa, or maybe you're good through both. But that's the biggest test. This is the only race where, when I was working on pit road, I would not see like snacks and sandwiches brought to crew members. I would see dinner. This is the only race where I see drivers being handed sandwiches during pit stops and things like that, because they could be in that race car racing for 4 or 5 hours or more, and it is literally the only race where everything about it is different in that regard, and it's the endurance aspect of it.
Yeah, it is a long haul flight for sure. Okay, Brad Gillie, what are the storylines that stand out entering the Coke 600? But I'm going to put an asterisk on that. Besides Kyle Larson, because we're going to get to all that.
Yeah, we'll save that. The storylines, I think, are numerous. You have a couple of big-name drivers who haven't won yet that are Coca-Cola 600 champions. Ryan Blaney, he is probably one of the top 3 fastest cars all season long, and whatever has kept him out of victory lane. I think that's one of the big storylines among the drivers who haven't won. Chase Elliott is another person who, look, we've only seen him win one race over the last couple of years, last year at Texas, still, he's a Coca-Cola 600 winner. And Chase Elliott is one of those people that you look at and you say, okay, when is this going to happen for him again? So I think a lot of people are watching that among all of the storylines. And the fact is, all right, who can start stacking up points now among our race-winning drivers? We've only had 7 drivers win in 12 races. And that seems like a low number by comparison to the past couple of years. But is someone else going to continue to separate themselves from the field? Or is someone new going to come in and maybe take a big trophy?
Are any of those winless drivers, and you can extend it outside of the 600, like who is going into this race kind of getting on that desperation line. Like, summer's about to be here. It's going to be harder and harder to pick up a playoff spot. Like, who needs a win this weekend?
I look at Brad Keselowski is going to need a win to get into the playoffs. I mean, he's over 100 points behind the playoffs cut line, and that's assuming the cut line stays where it is, because if someone outside of the top 16 in points wins, then the cut line moves up to the next spot and so on. He's awful this year, and when he's not awful, they've had bad luck. You know, they've had some nice days and they've had some really bad days. That's the biggest one. Truthfully, and I know they're appealing their penalty, but his teammate Chris Buescher, he went from 12th in the standings to 25th on a 60-point penalty. I mean, that's huge. That puts him into must-win territory, even though we still have 14 races to go until the playoffs. So now we have teams that are potentially good, historically race-winning teams, whose backs are against the wall, and that's kind of cool.
How has this year's intermediate package on the track informed you about what we might be able to expect this weekend?
It's weird. In some ways it's been consistent, in others it's been sporadic. Take a guy like Ross Chastain. They went to Homestead, a 1.5-mile track, and were awful. They go to Texas, and he goes from 31st to finish second. They go to Kansas, they're mediocre again. So what's Charlotte going to bring?
Yeah.
You know, I look at that. But then I do look at Denny Hamlin consistently fast on these tracks. He's had bad luck the last few weeks. I look at William Byron and Kyle Larson. These drivers have been consistently fast. Honestly, one person that people don't talk about, and I think they should, is Alex Bowman. His 1.5-mile record here recently, and I say recently, the past few years, is like top 3 in the series. He really is that good. So I think those are the drivers that run consistently well, and there are some other drivers who have struggled a little bit.
All right, now let's talk about Kyle Larson and double duty. You know, maybe it's because of the PGA Championship, and in my world, we're talking about all the different sports in Charlotte. We had the NFL schedule released last week. We had, the NBA lottery, and we don't have to dissect what happened there again for the Charlotte Hornets, but it seems like it's becoming the norm to like expect, okay, Kyle Larson, of course he's qualifying and he's going to do, you know, it's still a big deal though. Like, this is a massive deal in motorsports to pull double duty, to attempt to run the Indianapolis 500 and the Coca-Cola 600 on the same weekend. What have you thought about the lead up to this year's attempt before we kind of dive into how it may go?
Yeah, I know the first year is always going to be bigger, but to me the first year was different in that first year running an IndyCar, he had a lot of practice, but he goes to Indianapolis and it's like, wow, like he's good.
Yeah,
like he's taking
lead laps.
Yeah. I mean, he's just everything. This year leading up to it, he goes out in April for like a reconfirmation test or whatever and wrecks the car. He goes into the month of May, wrecks the car, qualifies 21st. You know, so it's not like the same, wow, look at what Kyle Larson's doing, because we already saw what he could do. He was running top 10 until he had a speeding penalty last year. So I think now the bigger question is the unknown. You know, he fell short. Literally the same rainstorm that delayed the start of the Indy 500 is the one that ended the Coca-Cola 600 early as it moved across the country. So the question then becomes, is he going to be able to make the 1,100 miles? So I think that's where some people temper their expectation or their anticipation, because it's like, okay, how's it going to happen?
Yeah, it was a letdown last year. Seeing him land from Paget in that lightning storm. I mean, we're all standing out there like, are they going to get in? Are they going to get in? He gets to pit road, and they call the race. We'll talk to Brad Panovich about what the weather's going to be like in Bolt City soon, but it looks pretty good to me. Right now, he's row 7, I think, position 19 for the 500 on the grid. Besides winning both, which is like a pipe dream for anybody to do, but he's as you said, he's been pretty good in the IndyCar before. What do you think would have this be a great successful for Kyle Larson? Would it be winning the 600 and finishing the Indy 500, or a top 10 in the Indy 500?
So if you're greedy, well, he's going to win both, right? If you're a Kyle Larson fan. Beyond that, I think first, run all the laps. Let's get in the 1,100 miles, because that's the cool story of it. Kurt Busch was the last one to do it, finished 6th at Indy and blew an engine after 100 and something laps, running well at Charlotte. Run the 1,100 miles. That's number one. That's successful. Number two, let's start getting a little more greedy. Top 10 in both. How about that? Maybe top 5, maybe you can win one of them. And I think the Coca-Cola 600 is obviously very doable because it's so long. But you never know what can happen. There's drama in both of these races. But I think number one is just run the laps. Say you completed it, and then let's start getting more and more greedy from there.
I ask this knowing that Tony Stewart completed all 1,100. I believe finished top 10 in each race 2 different years.
The second year.
Or the second year. Yeah. Does it feel different when Kyle Larson goes to Indy, though? Does it feel like this isn't just a NASCAR driver trying the Indy 500? I mean, did it feel like that with Tony Stewart? I wasn't around for Tony Stewart's double duties, but it just feels like he has transcended motorsports a little bit from, is he a NASCAR driver? Is he an IndyCar driver? Is he just a driver?
Yeah, you look at all the drivers that preceded Kyle Larson in doing this, John Andretti, Robbie Gordon, and Tony Stewart. They all had an IndyCar background.
Yeah.
Tony Stewart was an IndyCar champion, it's, he had that. And all along the way, he always talked about the Indy 500, growing up in Indiana. It was this, because he was an Indiana person. That's what felt different about that one. Like, oh, Tony gets another chance at winning the Indy 500. Kurt Busch goes and does it, similar to Kyle Larson. He's not an IndyCar background, but Kurt Busch is a guy like, man, he can drive anything as well. He was very successful in NHRA when he tried the Pro Stock division also. I think what makes Kyle Larson different is because he races so many different types of car. He gets in the wing sprint car, and he's won all of their Crown Jewel events. He gets in a dirt late model and literally wins his first time out, then wins their Crown Jewel events. He goes out to the Chili Bowl in Tulsa, Oklahoma, goes out and wins that event. I mean, it's Kyle Larson is the everything. So he's not the Indy guy who's running the Indy 500. He's the everything guy that's running the Indy 500.
All right, here wrapping up with Brad Gillie from Performance Racing Network as we talk about the Coca-Cola 600 this weekend. Let's just talk about the season so far. What has stood out to you through these 12 races of 2025 so far? As we mentioned, 12 races, 7 separate winners. What have been kind of some of the headlines and big storylines for you?
For me, we had big storylines when Christopher Bell won 3 races in a row. Could he win 4 in a row?
Yeah.
And then Denny Hamlin goes and wins 2 races in a row. Ooh, could he be the next one for 3 in a row? Those things are really cool. But what's interesting is the most consistent drivers are actually some of the ones who haven't been to victory lane yet, like Chase Elliott. William Byron comes out and wins the Daytona 500, but we haven't really seen him in victory lane and not really contending much, although they've been fast every week. Yeah. Kyle Larson wins and then might have, a bad week with trouble and so on and so forth. Denny Hamlin, he goes out there and wins those 2 races. And then as a Texan, it's bad karma because he walked across the stage and gave the horns down, blew his engine. Then the next week lost a clutch. Then the next week is awful in the All-Star race. That karma's following him. But it's that. It's the people who have won. It's almost like in baseball, someone with a big batting average, but a bad on-base percentage. And I think that's sort of one of the stories we've seen.
Yeah. Does the Coca-Cola 600 serve as kind of a reset a little bit for the season or a pivot point as we head into the summer?
Pivot point's the best way to put it, because if you look at, we've run a lot of NASCAR's traditional style tracks, from Martinsville to Darlington to Las Vegas, Texas, Daytona, Atlanta, Talladega, so on and so forth. And this is the halfway point of the regular season. 13 down, 13 to go before we get into the playoffs. So for the Coca-Cola 600, this is the beginning of summer. There is a shift. I mean, there just simply is a shift. Now we're going to go run 4 road course races in the next 13. We've got 2 speedway races with Atlanta and Daytona. We have tracks where we only go once a year, Michigan, Pocono, Nashville, Richmond, so on and so forth. Plus among those road courses we mentioned, Mexico City for the first time, Chicago Street Race, which is still fairly new. So this is the biggest variety in our schedule, biggest potential in our schedule as well, I feel, to find a unique winner, a Shane Van Gisbergen, a Brad Keselowski from 33rd in points, something like that.
Well, you talked about North Wilkesboro Speedway feeling like you're at the roots of NASCAR again. Does Charlotte Motor Speedway and the Coke 600 still have that feel? I mean, it goes all the way back to the World 600 and Bruton Smith. Does it still have that feel to you all these years later when you're there?
It does. It does for me as well. And I think it does for a lot of people too, and which is really cool. What I love about being at Charlotte Motor Speedway, you can walk around. I mean, this is a track that opened in 1961, right? And you can see things that were there when it opened. Then you can see all the modern amenities that were added onto it also. So that is one of the biggest things that I feel. And then I think of the list of winners, and it's literally been a who's who of NASCAR greats, from the Pettys and the Bakers and the Pearsons and so on and so forth. And Jeff Gordon, Matt Kenseth, Bobby Labonte getting their first career wins there. I mean, it's all of that history in one place. So yeah, this feels bigger when you get there.
All right, we'll be prepared for a long night, hopefully a fun night at the Coca-Cola 600 this Memorial Day Sunday. Brad Gillie from Performance Racing Network, thanks for stopping by, man.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. Appreciate it, man.
You
This is
got
awesome.
it. Good luck at the track.